It is January 2023, and I can't think of a place in January that I would rather be than Minneapolis, Minnesota. Maybe not so much, but hey, if you happen to be in that area, my man Tyler Jones is going to be there. He's going to put on a show for all of you at LFA 150, and he joins me here today. Tyler, this is like the fourth or fifth one of these things that we've
Yeah.
done, and it's always great to have you back on my show, man. Welcome as always, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. Happy to be back. I'm waiting for my mom's basement veteran t-shirt. We gotta get one of those made. Five
I
time.
have a rash guard. I'll send you one.
Go. Let's go. We gotta put
You're
me in the Hall of Fame. We gotta start a mom's basement Hall of Fame or something like
you are certainly in it, my friend. And let's talk about the Amateur Hall of Fame in Illinois. I think you belong there. You're a very, very decorated amateur mixed martial artist, and it's in the twilight of your career now, as far as the
that.
AMI scene is concerned. You are the type of person that if I had, mom's basement MMA gym, you were the type of person I would fly in and I would say, hey, if you can teach us some cool stuff, that would be great. But what I want you to do is actually talk to these guys and tell them all the shit that you've learned and like what some of these people can expect. And that's why I want to start off with you. You have been through it all. You've gone on winning streaks. You've won multiple titles. You've dropped a couple fights in a row. You pulled out crazy wins out of your ass. Like there's nothing that you haven't already experienced before. Like you've experienced everything you possibly can on the amateur scene. So if there's like an 18 or 19-year-old kid that shows up in your gym, bright-eyed and bushy tail, happy that he just got his blue belt and he's going to be the next Conor McGregor or Frankie Edgar or whoever, and he's getting
Yeah.
ready to make his amateur debut. Like, what would you tell somebody like that?
Man, yeah, like you were saying, as I kind of creep towards the twilight of my amateur career, I think back and I guess the biggest word of advice I'd give, a new fighter starting out or about to take that first fight is to take it slow and enjoy the process. Um, all of this happens so fast and your body goes through so much in these fight camps and you almost forget that this is escaping you quickly. Like you can only do this so many times and the number is very finite. And not all of us will go on to have successful pro careers. So that number is even smaller for someone who just wants to try out fighting. So yeah, my biggest piece of advice or quote that I can give is just remember that you don't have to fight, you get to fight. And that's really a big thing that I would have been thinking about back when I started my amateur career is not really worrying about my age so much or what I've done or what I've accomplished and focusing on other people's accomplishments, but instead thinking about just enjoying the process and enjoying the experience of being an amateur MMA fighter and MMA fighter in general. Because it escapes us quite quickly. I'm 28 years old right now. I've already had 6 MMA fights, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jiu-jitsu matches and wrestling and grappling exchanges. And I still feel young in the sport, but I feel like I've learned a lifetime already. So it comes fast and it goes fast as well.
With the explosion of MMA, like I know you have been doing it long enough to where you have seen the sport go to a completely different level from which you first started.
Yeah.
For those for the fans and people like myself, it's great because it means more opportunities for the fans to watch high level competitions from wherever. You could be in random town North Dakota and the LFA will bring a fight up there. Like everyone has an opportunity to watch high level MMA. And it wasn't really like this, 7, 8 years ago. This is a new sport and there's an increased demand with said sport. More opportunities for everybody. With that being said, it's one of those things where it's kind of like I almost feel it's almost too approachable in a way. This is a
Yeah.
really tough sport. And, if I was 21, 22 years old and pretending I was a fighter and somebody were to tell me, Tyler, you're the shit and we need you to come in and save our show. And whether I'm a pro or AMI, I could quickly find myself in a situation where maybe people aren't really looking out for my best interests. What would you tell somebody about making sure that you're surrounding yourselves with the right teammates and the right coaches to keep you honest and maybe tell you things that you may not want to hear all the time? I think that's really important for fighters. Sometimes they don't have that type of dynamic.
Yeah, I think having a coach that's really in your corner and not just trying to make money off of you is one of, if not the greatest prerequisites to becoming a successful fighter or just having a fun career. Like I said in the beginning, not everyone wants to be a long time pro fighter and get to the big shows. Some people just want to have some fights under their belt and kick it off the bucket list, but regardless of where you fall in the spectrum, having a coach that actually cares about you and cares about your well-being and where you want to go in the sport, I think is of the utmost importance. And that's something that I have in Danny Summers is someone who has always looked out for me and has always looked out for everyone on our team to make sure that they're taking the right fights and that and that goes both ways. Like he has never allowed me, not that I've wanted one, but if I came to him and said, I want to fight this guy, he's never allowed me to take a fight that isn't a tough fight. You're not going to get any better by fighting guys who are below you in skill level. And that's, in my eyes, just as important, right? You don't want to go out there getting fed by the hometown hero, a guy who's going to be, the D1 wrestler who's 0-0, right? Who's going to sell a bunch of tickets and the promoter wants to feed you to him. That's where a good coach steps in and says, no, this isn't the one we're going to take regardless of the opportunity. But yeah, I mean, having a coach like that is one of the most important things you can have. You should be aligning yourself with someone who actually cares about your career and cares about you as a person.
I've heard some fighters suggest that MMA is going the way of boxing and that there's a lot of record padding going on, that there's a lot of fighters that are getting away, we'll say, with fighting lesser opponents. And is that a generalization in your opinion, or do you think that there's some truth to that?
I think there's some truth to that. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But and the thing is, it's going to catch up to you sooner or later, right? Like, unlike boxing, this sport is very transparent and probably the most transparent sport in the world. And I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I love the sport. But you really have to ask yourself the question, like, do I want my first big test to be on Dana White's Contender Series or the PFL's what do they call theirs?
Challenger series?
Challenger Series, right? Like, I want my test to be early on. I want my test to be in an amateur career. Like, I want to know I have the skills to compete with the best guys at the top level before it really matters, right? I don't need to be asking myself that question in between the second and third round in the Dana White Contender Series. Or for that instance, like in an actual UFC card, if you get that opportunity, or a Bellator card, or one, or the list goes on. So I think it's important to not build a 10-0 all first round finishes record against a bunch of guys who are never going to be in the UFC or never going to be in those big shows. And then when you get there, you ask yourself, like, damn, I've never been here. Like, I've never been in trouble before. I've never been matched. And oh, we got a visitor.
Oh, that's okay.
Um, but yeah, like, you don't want to ask yourself that question when it really counts. You should be testing yourself all the time. And I think that's one of the most underutilized portions of amateur MMA, especially if someone like myself who plans to have a lengthy pro career and plans to make a living off of this. I want and have always stuck to my guns in wanting to fight the toughest guys at amateur. I've always wanted to fight the guys who different types of matchups, but they're good matchups, they're tough matchups, and I get to learn a lesson within those matchups. And I think it really prepares you for a pretty well-rounded experience when you do decide to go pro. There shouldn't be many surprises when you step in there to be a professional fighter, just like in any other profession. There shouldn't be many surprises when you walk into the office 10 years after being an accountant.
Right.
You should know everything every day of work. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be surprised by anything that happens to you in a fight. Anything can happen, but you should feel pretty confident in your skill set and your skill level going in, and flush out all that doubt in your amateur career, right? Because like the difference between winning is often fear and doubt, right? I've been reading this book called Winning. It's by the mental coach of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. It's a great book. I suggest everyone listen to it. But that's one of the things that he talks about is people. Everyone experiences fear. Fear is good, right? You should fear things. Fear means you care about things. Fear is going to heighten your senses enough to turn in one of the best performances of your life. But doubt is going to drive you to lose. Doubt is going to drive you to underperform. And I've been on both sides of that coin, especially recently. So, yeah, man, I think making sure that doubt is not a part of your psyche going into your pro career is monumental to a successful career.
I think it's one of those things where you're highlighting parts of the mental game or of fighting that I believe is just absolutely critical. If your mental game is not locked down, it's like, being a wolf with no teeth. It's like
Yeah.
you're in big trouble. And I think, to me, at least in my mind, the armchair sports psychologist I am, I guess it would just be, I think there's like a really good mix. There's like a 50-50 blend of like being like cerebral and aware, and then confidence is that other part of the equation. Like you have to have a really good blend of both, because if you're not confident but you're aware, it's like, well, that might not be great.
Yeah.
And if you're 100% confident but you're completely unaware, then it's like, well, that's not great either. It's like, I think you want to balance that out with both. I think that's really critical. And when you look at some of the best fighters in the world and you speak with them, as I have been fortunate to do on a few different occasions, I feel like that's kind of the vibe I get from them. It's like there's a healthy mixture of confidence, yet they're very cerebral, they're very aware, and they know what they're getting into.
Yeah, I think, I remember I've been watching this sport for a long, long time now. First event I ever watched was the Ultimate Fighter one finale with Stephen Bonner, rest in peace, and Forrest Griffin. And, every single pre-fight recording, at least once or twice a card, you heard someone say, I believe this game is 60% mental and 40% skills, or even 80% mental. And I always remember hearing that as a young fan and thinking like, yeah, what like that doesn't really like
Yeah.
that's not gonna affect me. And being in this part of my career specifically, dropping two in a row, which were in my eyes direct results of not being in the right mindset, not being in the right mental state to go out there and fight. I would argue 60% is lowballing it. It's 80%. Your mental game, your mental skills are absolutely pivotal to being a great fighter and to being a great anyone. Um, and that's probably something I've done. I've put the most work into this camp is really trying to find out who I am, why I do this, and just in general, like what kind of person I want to be in life, and what I have in me. Like, what am I made of? There's a quote from David Goggins. It's to get something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. Right. And that's what I'm doing right now. And it's not always pleasant to be introspective like that and to look inward and talk to yourself about why you may feel this way before a fight, or why you may feel that way after practice. But it's beneficial as hell, man. Like I got this whole notebook here is just filled with shit that I have to read every day, and it's stuff that is not always pleasant to read, and it's stuff that I always don't want to do this and look through things and remind myself that I had these feelings. But it's pivotal if you want to do if you want to be successful in this line of work, and honestly in any line of work, like you should always be questioning yourself and trying to better yourself mentally.
I think you're alluding to a lot of things that make not only just fighting, but life so difficult where it's like you need to be honest with yourself, right? So it's like, okay, well, what does that mean, right? Because, so for example, if somebody were to tell me something like, hey, Tyler, I don't know, that report that you did kind of sucks ass. And,
Yeah,
then you get defensive, right? Like, oh, well, fuck you, right? But then it's like, that's a defense mechanism. So
yeah,
it's like, okay, well, like, a point has been addressed. Remove the emotion out of it and just look at the facts. And it's like, be your own detective. Like, is there truth to that or no? And deep down in your heart, like, it's just your response. You're either going to acknowledge that and be honest, or it's your pride or ego or whatever the case may be that's like going to come out instead. But you make that choice. You make that decision. Like, am I going to be honest and like set aside the ego and answer this question honestly or respond to this situation in kind,
yeah,
or am I going to let my defense mechanisms like overrun that? And that's really hard to do, right? Like, it's really hard to be honest with yourself and to, like, when things aren't going right in your life, fighting or not, it's like you look at your life and when you come to that realization, like, man, I've been fucking up. Like,
yeah,
that's hard to do. Like,
yeah,
it's not easy to hear from somebody else suggesting that, but like once you come to the realization on your own, it's like, holy fucking balls. Now
yeah,
what? Now what are we gonna do? And I think of year 2022, Tyler. I can't think of there are a few fighters I know of that had a more difficult one. And I'm not just talking about all the L's. You competed twice. Those fights didn't go your way, but I'm also looking at it and just through talking to you, because I tried my best to keep in touch with you, even though I know you're busy. But it's like all these bout cancellations that are happening too. On top of that, all these different names that come your way, and right, you get excited, like, oh, cool, a new name, and then you build that matchup in your head, and then it falls apart, and you get a new name, and it's like this like roller coaster wave of like emotions that you're trying to deal with. And that's a lot. So I wanted to ask, and I know you alluded to it. You talked about working on your mental game and like making sure you're in that right spot. But you're 2022. Like, if you had to like give a Cliff Notes version of like what went wrong, whether it's in or outside of the cage, like what was that storm like? And like what have you done to like get out of it? And the fight next week has nothing to do with getting out of that answer, regardless of what happens next week. I think it's critical where it's like, yeah, you encountered adversity, but at the same time, it's like, what did you do to like rise out of that? And I think the shitty part about MMA is like we're really quick to, you know, this is a sport about individual improvement. It's about making yourself better and like becoming a better human being as a result. But I feel where we struggle is sometimes we don't get the results we want. And like while we're building ourselves up, we actually tear ourselves down like to a new layer or to a new depth of hell inadvertently. So
yeah.
that's a lot I threw at you. What do you got to say about some of that stuff I just threw out?
Man, I think not to be cliche, but I think when I look back at my career 5 to 10 years from now, I think I'm going to look back at 2022 as one of the most influential years of my competition career throughout my whole life. I think that this last year is going to play such a pivotal role in where I go and how I'm going to grow that I'll end up being thankful for it. But to give the Cliff Notes version of 2022, I think there's two aspects of it. When I look at the fighting aspect of it, um, I see an unwillingness to address mental issues, right? An
Mm-hmm.
unwillingness to address the idea of not taking ownership over a skill set that I had to work on. And that's exactly what it is. The mental part of this game is a skill set. I work with a sports psychologist, Scott Halicki, and mental skills. It has the word in there. That's exactly what they are, is their skills, and it's attribute training, and you have to practice these things. You cannot just walk into a fight and anticipate that you're going to be ready to go. Especially as you climb in levels, it's not the same. Like you need the extra percentage to get in there and get wins over the top fledged guys, and that's what's going to be the difference, is who has more in the intangibles, right? And mental skills is one of those intangibles. Yeah, I think when I look back at 2022, that's one half of it. The other half of it is a lot of testing of myself. I really jumped out of my comfort zone last year and tried to compete in a lot of matches that were above and beyond where I was at on paper, right? Like, and I'm talking mainly strictly jujitsu at this point in time, but taking super fights against black belts, brown belts, whoever, to get the experience of competing against high level dudes who just do jujitsu and who are at the cream of the crop in terms of the belt ranking systems, and getting that look, and kind of understanding that I'm not always going to win my matches. I could be the nail too. And being the nail and feeling how it is to being the nail is a very important feeling in this combat sports world that we live in. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of growth in that regard, but there was um, a lot of meaning and need to be introspective and look inside of myself and say, what the hell am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And why am I not spending enough time practicing these skills? And I think going into 2023 and having a fight and really putting the focus on my mental skills as well as my physical ones. But I think in both of the fights that I lost in 2022, I don't, and this is taking nothing away from my opponents, I don't believe that it was a skill set thing. I believe that it was a mental thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and with that being said, I mean, both of those guys are very high level guys. Kevin is a high level fighter, and he's good everywhere, very well rounded. The same thing with Sheldon. Sheldon is, I would not doubt if we see Sheldon on one of the big shows here very soon. Um, but with that being said, I think that if I show up on fight night, I have a winning performance in both of those fights. But that's not what happened, and that's okay. Um, and I think it's going to be pivotal where I go next with those fights in mind. And then to answer, to kind of speak on the switching of opponents and all that stuff. I mean, that's something that really got to me
Mm-hmm.
last year, especially in the Showtime fight with Kevin. Um,
Because I know you're supposed to fight a different guy, a couple different guys,
yeah,
right?
man, we probably had 8 to 10 different opponents, and that's no knock on Showtime. Like Showtime's a good promotion, and they manage
Yeah.
me too, right? But like, it was extremely frustrating to be in the position where I don't know who I'm fighting. I have a different name every week. I'm getting mentally invested into each guy, but then one guy, Kevin, who ended up taking the fight, was offered the fight. He had the fight in his pocket the entire time. He had my name the entire time and took the fight, with 2 weeks left or whatever it was. But for all I know, he could have been just preparing for me the whole time
Mm-hmm.
and decided, okay, if we're at this threshold of the date, then I'm just going to take the fight and run. And that's a smart move. And he
Yeah.
went out there and fought a really good fight. But I told myself after that fight, and I told my coach, I'm never doing that again. Like, especially in the amateur circuit, because it's so frustrating to prepare for someone's specific skill set for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time, and then get the switch up, and now you're like, where you don't even know where you are in space and time,
Mm-hmm.
and I say that to my coach, and then it happens to me again for this fight. And for those of you who don't know, I was supposed to fight Mitchell Wilson, very tough wrestler, good boxing. He gets COVID. I hope he recovers, and I hope all is well with him. But then we get a new opponent 2 weeks out, and it's like, here we are again, man. Like, we're in the same spot that we were. but mentally I see it completely different. And I think that's what's going to be, the difference, not only in outcome, but the difference in my career going forward is really just sticking to these mental skills. And I have to pay credit where credit's due. Um, Binge listening to David Goggins books multiple times in a row and just becoming obsessed with every word that the guy's got to say has really changed the way that I look at myself mentally, and the type of ownership that I take over, um, when I'm cutting corners in practice, when I'm cutting corners in diet and life and mental generalities, and just writing this stuff down. It's been a huge help, and it's been extremely um, enlightening, to say the least. So yeah, I think a lot of the time for guys like me, and I'm sure there's other fighters out there, we feel like, such men, such alpha males, that we feel like if we're not coming up with it ourselves, then it's not worth our time. If I didn't come up with this way to get more mentally in tune before a fight, then I probably shouldn't do it. But I'm going to be straight up honest with you. There's 10 exercises, mental exercises I do in this book that I straight up stole from David Goggins,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it's for. I don't need to come up with these things. I just need to do them. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I do feel the difference for sure. But
But there's no
I
difference from what you're talking about to like, so for example, I that would be like me going into a jiu-jitsu thing. I don't know anything, and but that's you're like a pro basically at it, and it's like, okay, I'm going to humble you and I'm going to teach you. So it's like for me to be a good student, it's like, okay, wow, this guy is going to probably make me barf a bunch. He's probably going to hurt me a lot often. But if I set my ego aside and do what he's telling me to do, I like I'm going to learn like the basics of jujitsu. I can be
right,
like I can have a white belt with a few stripes on it, and
yeah,
I'll be able to choke out 99% of the regular human population because I'm
right,
a big bad motherfucker, right? But for you, on the flip side, it's like okay, like you talk about that alpha mentality. It's like I didn't come up with it myself, but here's a guy who's went through a whole lot of adversity in his life, and I was able to like use these fundamentals that he taught me. I set my ego aside and I
yeah,
heard what he had to say, and I'm actually applying that. And I think that's just an indicator that you're willing to like be a student,
yeah,
and not everyone is. And more credit to you.
yeah. And it's tough, right? Like I keep preaching it again. It's not a fun exercise by any means, and I often, find myself like, man, I really just don't want to do it. And not
Mm-hmm.
all of it is bad. Like not all of it's this like, why do you feel like a bitch? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not that. It's more just like answering this. I have this exercise that I do. I'll give you guys a freebie. So when David Goggins was in SEAL training, right, when he was in Hell Week, he had to do Hell Week 3 times. He had a bunch of different issues. Hell Week for Navy SEALs is horrible. And a lot of MMA fighters can probably resonate with me when we're doing conditioning. Our practice is really hard, sparring, hard roll, someone's on top of you. You have questions that flash in your head when you're tired, and you ask yourself, why do I even do this? Or after a hard practice, you may be like, man, I don't even know where I'm at right now. I'm not getting better. There's times where everyone gets low times. Um, and Goggins would get that too when he was in SEAL training. He'd be asking himself those questions in a time of great, stress when he's getting put through these exercises. So he started to rehearse these questions he was asking himself in the mirror at baseline at night when the answers are very easily retrievable, right? So why am I doing this? Because if I don't do this, I have nothing else. Stuff like that, right? Why do I want to be a Navy SEAL without being a Navy SEAL? What do I have? Who am I? Right? And you rehearse those questions. That way, when they show up and you're tired and you're broken down, the recall is very easy. Why am I doing this? I do it because of this. Well, how did that come in my brain so fast? Because I rehearsed it already, right? It's in my brain already. So
Mm-hmm.
if I get in the fight and I get hurt and I get dropped and I say to myself, well, why do I even have to keep fighting? I know why I have to keep fighting because I've said it to myself 1,000 times this camp. I've said it
Mm-hmm.
to myself every day for the last 3 months, and that's where the difference starts to play out, and it helps in fights, but it helps in camp too, and it'll help at work if you want to be a better employee. You know what I mean? Why do I do this? Why should I get this turned in on time? It's applicable across the human experience,
Hmm.
and that's just one of the things that I've been doing that I just feel like is a game changer, you know, and I feel dumb for not doing it my entire career.
Did you get to a point in this camp where, despite all the negativity that surrounded 2022, despite the opponents that dropped off, the losses that you took, you had the opportunity to start off 2023 in the win column? That in and of itself has got to be like a weight lifted off of you, because like you can go back out there in a relatively short amount of time after a disappointing 2022 and not have to stew on that much longer. Like you have that opportunity to get back out there, get your first win since September of 2021. I know how important that is for you,
Yeah,
but also as you're preparing mentally and physically for this upcoming bout, did you ever like make it a point to just tell yourself, like, you know what, man, like I'm gonna go into training, I'm just gonna have fun today?
yeah,
Like when it stops being fun, that's when like it's a huge red flag. And I know that, there's pressure. I know that there's intensity. I know that you carry yourself like a professional. This is a performance-based business, but also at the same time, it's like if you're going through all that stuff and you're not finding any joy in it, and if you're not able to like enjoy that moment, like enjoy getting your roles and enjoy what like being a fighter is all about, then we got an issue here. And so did you ever like get to that point in that good mental space in your mind where you're just thinking to yourself like, oh yeah, this is why I do this, like I'm having fun, like I like
yeah,
this?
yeah. I mean, to answer the first part about the 2023, coming into the new year, ushering it in. I mean, it's such a great opportunity to wipe the slate clean, um, and and I'm excited for that. I think that it would be silly to say that I'm not, you know.
Sure.
But something that I've really kind of started to think about lately is that your amateur career record, it means little to nothing at the end of the day. And not that the losses matter more for in here and the lessons learned than they do anything else. So I've been trying to kind of just live with that mantra and say, they weren't really losses to me. They were lessons learned, and I can't wait to show the what comes from those lessons learned and for my next one. And I think I'm going to do that. I know I'm going to do that for this fight, and I'm excited to be on the winning column once again and show people the prospect that I am, and show put the division on notice, put the promotions on notice, and let them know that I am worth their time, I'm worth their money, and I'm worth investing resources into, because that's the stage of the career that I'm in right now. Is I need to be someone where promotions say, now that guy we can bring onto the card, so that's really what I'm focused on for this fight and for fights in the future. The second part about having fun, if you ask my training partners and especially my coach Danny, I almost have that to a flaw where training is like so fun for me and I'm so happy go lucky that I forget that we're like fist fighting, right? And I've shown that in fights too. Like when I fought Kai, like I walk out, everyone's booing me, and I'm just like in la la land. I'm like having too much fun. He cracks me with the right hand. I'm on my butt. Oh shit, I forgot we're in a fight, right? Like I'm so happy to be living out my dream and have this experience that I forget that like we're in a real physical altercation and the guy across from me is trying to kill me. And so like that happens to me at the gym all the time, and we have such a fun like group at the gym. And I've been running the competition grappling team there, so I teach there 3 times a week, and that has been nothing but a blast. And so yeah, I mean, I have too much fun at the gym, but that's almost baseline, right? So
Sure.
I don't anticipate that's ever going to go away. Martial arts for me has been a saving grace, and and just like anything else, it's easy to get tired of it. It's easy to get down on it. But that's more when I look at it as an athlete competing, and when I flip the script and do it just as a guy training and just as a guy trying things out, especially with jujitsu, jujitsu is so much fun to me. Um, I really never get away from having so much fun, and that's my community now. When you train 6 days a week, it's hard to not just like live in that world. I don't do much else but train, work, and sit on the computer at home and hang out with my girlfriend. And I'd like to cut one of those things out being work. I'd like to make one of those things work, MMA, and hopefully make that a full-time job. But for now, I mean, that's where you live. Like you live within the gym and you foster these relationships, and that's kind of where you have to enjoy yourself because you're going to get burnt out, right? I talk about it all the time, and some fighters may see it as a disrespect thing, but I think that MMA is very unique in the way that it's a sport where if you stick around long enough, you will get a big opportunity. If you cash in on it or if you don't cash in on it, that's up for grabs. That's up to skill. That's up to mental things. That's up to all the things we talked about earlier. But if you stick around long enough and you stay persistent, you will get a call from a big show at some point. You will be in the right place at the right time. Or you will get the big knockout against the guy who was the prospect and now you're the prospect. You will find yourself in a situation to cash in. You just got to stick around long enough.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ancillary things that need to happen in the background to make sure that you stick around long enough and keep MMA at the top of your brain, the forefront of your mind.
I always tell people, it goes back to the red corner, blue corner thing. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
listen, like, look at all these guys, like in Bellator is a great example. It's like someone's got to fight those guys.
Yeah.
Somebody has to fight those guys. And you think the red corner wins all the time?
Right.
Okay. Like, and that was disproven not that long ago when Bellator was in Chicago and Daniel James did what he did to Tyrell Fortune. We just
Yeah.
talked about that. That was a great
Yeah.
example.
Shout out to Daniel James, one of his coaches, Barry Hoppin, who I was just hitting mitts with yesterday. Barry's the shit. He's the best.
And that's just kind of what I remind people with. I'm just like, hey, listen, dude, someone's got to go out there and fight these guys. And it could be you. You just need to worry about you. Just do what you need to do. Go out there and perform and win. And you do that, and the right people will notice. MMA is growing, and that means there are more and more opportunities. Are you on weight? Are you healthy? If the answer is yes to both of them, then there you go. To your point, Tyler, it's just a matter of, are you willing to like wait it out?
Be
Some
there.
people are, and some
Gotta
people
be
aren't.
there, and that's the thing, man. And I really think now, and I don't know if enough people have jumped on this bandwagon yet, but they will within the next couple of years. Uh, Seeing how jujitsu is really blowing up, like almost at the rate of MMA. Jujitsu right now reminds me of the UFC in like 2007, 2008. Like it's really starting to pick up. We're starting to see characters emerge: the Gordon Ryans, the Mikey Musumeci's, the Gary Tonans, um, Danielle Kelly's. All these people are really jumping up and through the mix, and I really think that jujitsu is going to be the pacifists MMA going forward. And especially, and even if you want to take it a step forward, combat jiu-jitsu is going to be another thing that really gets exciting and really gets people's heads turned
And why can't we
going to
do
the next
that? Why can't we do that? What is this slappy thing? What is that? I don't know what that
combat
is.
jiu-jitsu.
Why don't we
Yeah,
just do the jujitsu thing instead? That to me sounds a lot cooler. If the
so fun.
UFC just had a grappling league,
Yeah,
why not?
and I love it. I love to watch the UFC jiu-jitsu thing is awesome, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but one of my goals for 2023 is to get on a big grappling show like that, whether it be Fury Grappling or the UFC's grappling show, something big against a big name to show that I'm in the mix, and those are the goals that other fighters should be setting for themselves too, because you have to almost like put yourself out in many different avenues, like if I go out there for Fury Grappling, I get a cool sub, and then the guy who runs Fury Grappling is like, "Hey man, we love to have you fight. There's your door. It's open now."
I would
So
even go even a step bolder, my friend, and I would say that even more so if you're a striker. If you're a boxer, if you're a kickboxer, it's like if you don't have anything to do and you're at a high level like that, it's like you should be dying to get on one of those grappling cards. You should be dying.
yeah, shout out to Midwest Finishers only, who I had like fucking 7 super fights with last year, and and Omar, the guy who runs it, Omar Casio, is a black belt under Eddie Bravo. His first black belt in the Midwest under Eddie. Has his own gym, 10th Planet Lombard. If you're in the Chicagoland area, check out 10th Planet Lombard. But Midwest Finishers is one of the sponsors of mine. Great show, one of the best grappling shows in the Midwest, if not the best grappling show in the Midwest. But I have cemented myself within their promotion as the guy to call if you need a match. Like probably 4 or 5 of the super fights I won. I had 2 really strong performances out of like maybe 5 performances, and the 2 were the ones where like they actually offered me a super fight. I took it, and we had time to prepare for it. The other like 4 or 5, it was like, hey, are you doing anything tomorrow? Like we need someone to fill in. I'm like, fuck, I don't care. It's
Let's go.
grappling. You know, what's the worst that could happen? And that's kind of what you have to do is that you have to be that guy, right? Just like Dana White says, be Joe Piper. That's who you have to be at the lower levels too, because that's only going to continue. You can't just be that guy when the time comes. You have to be that guy in general.
I
And
think
that's what I'm trying to do, you know?
I think you're exactly right. I think you have the right attitude for it because I think there are a lot of people that maybe get on a podcast more than they should, and then they start buying into their own hype, and then it's like they expect to be the red corner wherever they go
Right.
and get a full camp every single time. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, dude, yeah, MMA doesn't really work that way. Like you have to be
No.
in shape all the time. You have to be ready to go no matter what. Because shame on you if you're the guy that gets that call from the UFC to make and you get an opportunity and then you show up and you're fat as fuck to the point where your
Right.
opponent doesn't want to fight you. Like shame on you because you had that chance and you blew it.
You never get it again.
You may not ever get it again. And it's critical, especially if you're a smaller guy. Because it's like,
Right.
dude, like I know those weights are tough. I know it sucks, but it's like, that's just the price that you have to pay, though. You have to do it. You have to show up. You have to make the weight, and you have to be ready to rock and roll. I know you're going to be ready to rock and roll. You got a week away. How excited are you for that? I know it's been a run in the making. You've been waiting for this. I know you've been wanting to get back into the MMA cage for a while. You have your opportunity. It's about an 8 hour, 7, 8 hour drive away from you. Not that far, but also, that's quite a chunk of time to spend on the road in the time leading up to the fight. So I wanted to ask, like, what's your mindset going to be when you're in your car getting ready to drive, getting ready to make that drive here in another week?
Yeah. Well, so thankfully LFA flies us out. So that's
Oh,
good. It's
that's
a
there
one
you
to two
go.
hour flight. That's nothing. Um, but yeah, man, I'm super pumped, right? Like one of the things that I've really responded upon, and I'm sure at this point it's like beating a dead horse, the mental aspect of it. But one of the things I've continued to go back on in the prep for this camp is think about where, when I was in middle school, obsessed with UFC and watching every card that came on and playing the video games and just being in awe of any fighter at any level, what would that version of myself think about me being in this moment right now? And, it just fills me with joy. It fills me with excitement. Being on LFA, such a big card, their 150th event. Mystic Lakes Casino is a historic venue where plenty of WEC matches went on and just a lot of history there. And it feels like the start, you know, of it's the part of my dream where it actually starts to take off. It feels like the groundwork has been laid and now I can start running up the stairs. And yeah, sometimes it's hard not to get like emotional about being awarded an opportunity like this to fight for such a great promotion and have such a platform to showcase my skills and I'm just thankful, you know, for life and to be in the position that I'm in and have the skill set that I have and have the health that I have to be able to do what I'm doing right now. Um, yeah, man, I'm so excited to even step foot in the cage, let alone go perform in it.
I know that you just recently, we talked about it earlier. It's been announced that you have a new opponent. So I wanted to get your thoughts really quickly on the challenge that your opponent is going to pose against you. What do you know about him? And what do you want your supporters to know as you're, you know, prepared to throw down against this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I know first off, I mean, extremely thankful that he stepped up on short notice to take a fight, especially against the guy who and myself has, almost close to double the amount of fights that he has, a lot of jiu-jitsu experience as well. So thankful to that. And we talked about it earlier at your amateur career, the ones who are willing to test themselves are the ones who are going to rise to the occasion later in their careers and in their pro careers. So, props to him for stepping up and taking a fight against a tough opponent. But yeah, I know that he's got a good gas tank. He likes to come forward. He's very inept at grappling. He's got a high grappling IQ. He's got great jujitsu, very long. Um, yeah,
Sounds like somebody I know.
yeah, right. I see shades of myself and him, a younger version of myself. I only wish I started fighting at his age. I got a little bit of a later start to it, but yeah, it should be a great fight. It should be very fun to test myself against the skills that he presents at the stage that we'll be on. Um, for the supporters out there, I would say this would be one to watch. I think I'm going to turn in the best performance of my life, and that's regardless of opponent. Doesn't matter who I was going to fight. I was going to turn in a, a real strong performance, no matter the opponent. So if you've been following me for my career, if there was one that you were to tune in on, it would be this one. So I'm very excited to show who I actually am in the cage. I don't feel like the last two fights are indicative of the fighter that I am, and I'm desperate to show otherwise. And shout out to all my sponsors for all the help getting ready for these fights. It's not easy. There's a lot of there's a lot that goes into these fights. There's nutritionists, there's diets, there's sports psychologists, there's everything, and it's very hard to keep it all in check without the help of others. So if I could run down a list real quick
Absolutely.
to help myself out. You got to write it down, or you will mess it up, especially when you have such a good group behind you, uh, that really takes care of you. So, Circle Tavern, Emerson's Ale House, Barber Lounge, Cumberland Chiropractic, Midwest Sports Training, Chicago Leasing Experts, Jimmy's Red Hots, best hot dogs in Chicago, Sonic Palette Productions. Oh yes, okay. I don't know how I didn't mention this, but it's been going around on social media a little bit. But Andy Adamus, who runs Sonic Palette Productions, which is a documentary company, Emmy award-winning documentary filmmaker, has decided to make a documentary about me, my life, and my career thus far. And we've been shooting for about 3.5 months, 4 months now, probably even more than that. And not just like a little like flip phone documentary. I mean, we're talking legitimate studio quality documentary. If you guys have ever seen Notorious on Netflix, we're talking that type of quality. So very excited for that process. We've been going through the ringer on that. It's called I'm Only Human, and it aims to kind of shed light on how MMA fighters are really, we're just another guy in the street, just another girl in the office. We're just people. We're only human. So that'll be coming out soon. We'll be taking footage from the fight and all that stuff. He's got a press pass, so he'll be doing all that. So keep an eye out for that. Follow the I'm Only Human Instagram page to continue to get updates on that. MMA Tico always holding it down for the gear. I know you got the gear from MMA Tico as well, so check them out. My guy Eddie's got some French bulldogs. Hit him up if you want some French bulldogs. He's got the best cream of the crop bulldogs. Skeptic Distillery, Midwest Finishers. We talked about them. Trials and Tribulations, Gear Sportswear. Angelo Mar, another great creative guy coming out of Chicago. Check him out. a performer's mind. That's my sports psychologist, high level dude. If you're an MMA fighter and you're not exploring that aspect of skills, you really need to hit Scott up. And then lastly, Tyler LaRosa at MSF Sports Training, one of the best strength and conditioning coaches around. Period. If you don't know him yet, but you will know him. So yeah, man, it's obvious that I got quite a bit of a team behind me, but um, it's important and it's pivotal. And shout out to you too, man, for giving us these fighters a platform to talk and let people know not only how we perform but who we are as people.
Oh well, thank you. I've been following your career for a really long time, pretty much since I uh, really like built this platform, and I just thought I wanted it to be different, but above all, I wanted it to be authentic and genuine. And the only way it works is like I want to talk to you when you're an amateur, and it's gonna make all the other shows that we do down the road that much better because those it's almost like a Netflix thing because it's like, well, episode one, you got to go all the way back to episode one when we were getting ready to fight Slate because that one's
Right,
out there somewhere.
right,
You got to go find that one, and like that's where you start. And then as your career progresses, it's like, wow, you got like a breadcrumb trail, so you can like see the guts of what
right,
happened at that time. Now multiply that across however many hundreds of these shows that I've done,
right.
and now you're starting to see something that's really unique that I don't think a lot of other people are taking a quite the same approach. It's more randomized or it's more like UFC centric. And I'm not a UFC fan. I'm an MMA fan. There's a big difference. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I wanted to ask you a couple questions before I let you go because I know you're a huge nerd about MMA like myself. I had to ask you a couple things. First and foremost, Jake Paul signed with the PFL. What is your immediate reaction to something like that?
Um, Look, think what you want about Jake Paul. I know he's outspoken and his character is one that often is questioned. But if you look at just the stats and look at it just on paper, he's knocked out now. Well, not knocked out, but he's beaten multiple MMA champions. He's fought Ben Askren, knocked him out. He's by no means a slug when it comes to boxing or combat sports. He wrestled in high school, and people may say what you will about the lack of experience in MMA, but let us not forget that the UFC signed CM Punk to a 3-fight deal and had him fight. Jake Paul has a hell of a longer resume and a more exciting resume than CM Punk had whatsoever at all. And I think that that's something that should really be looked at when we think about Jake Paul and his career in the PFL. And this, I think it's overlooked that they also announced that they're doing a super fights division. That is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Like that's one of the reasons why Pride works so well is that you had these freak show fights that happened. Minotauro versus Bob Sapp, Giant Silva's running in there with a giant piece of wood trying to slap who was it? Manoa Man, little guy running around. So like Emmanuel Yarbrough was fighting Manoa Man. He got like 600-pound differences in fights. Like I love that. I would love to watch that again. I know that's not what they mean by super fight, but sign me up for whatever iteration of that term that there is. Like I'm down for it. So
Okay, so we'll clone myself. I'll get jacked on PCP, and you'll have to fight two of me at
let's
the same
go.
time. Let's
Let's
go.
go. I'm
Yeah,
down for it, dude. Japan
yeah,
would eat that up.
two other fights I wanted to get your opinion on. If you are a corner man for Glover Teixeira, what are you telling him ahead of his fight against Jamal Hill?
Well, I mean, I think that in MMA, a lot of the time we're forced to think in the path of least resistance. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the path of least resistance in this fight is to get on top of Jamal Hill and smother him, beat him up, and take his neck home. And I think Glover Teixeira is perfectly capable of doing that. He's also perfectly capable of boxing with Jamal Hill. it's something that he shouldn't take lightly because Jamal Hill's got the touch of death in his hands. He kind of reminds me of guys like Anthony Johnson in a way where it's like shots that don't even look hard, but he's just putting people out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be careful with that. We've seen Glover fall at that against Anthony Johnson, but yeah, I think one of the reasons why Anthony or Glover does so well is that he hides his takedowns very well with his boxing. He threatens with his hands, makes you think about it, forget about the takedown, then he comes in and this isn't the first time that Glover's fought a guy as dangerous on the feet as he's fought Hill. We just said Anthony Johnson. He's been in there with Yuri. I mean, he's been in there with just about everyone at this point in time. So yeah, if I'm in his corner, I'm telling him to throw hands, get his guard up, get that high guard rolling on Jamal Hill. He comes back to counter, stick him up against the fence, take him down, start to work on the ground.
I like Glover in that fight,
So
actually.
do I.
I think it's a really good fight for him. Um, we've seen Jamal Hill get caught before with jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
and that was probably like I wanted to puke when his arm busted. That was
Oh
one of the
yeah.
nastiest
Gross.
things I've ever heard.
Then he just
Uh,
stared at it.
yeah, and he just stared at it. And but I will say this: you alluded to something that I think is really interesting. I don't think Glover's going to be intimidated. Um, I think he knows exactly what he has to do in order to win. But I do think he'll go toe to toe on the feet with Jamal.
Yeah.
And I think he can hold his own. I mean, for Christ's sakes, he did it against Yuri Prohaska for damn near a half hour.
Right. And let us not forget that he was probably, what, 2 minutes away from winning that fight
Two
before
minutes
he made
away from
that
winning the
mistake.
fight.
I mean, he
Yeah,
doesn't jump on that guillotine, he probably wins the fight or stops Yuri. So, I
yeah.
mean, that's a feather in the cap right there. When I saw that fight announced, I said, man, Glover's gonna die. Like this will be the end of
I
Glover's
think we
career.
all thought that.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And he went out there and just put it on Yuri. And it was a war, by no means was it one-sided, but I was confident in Glover's scorecard going to the judges at that point in time. So his skill set is there. Do I think Jamal Hill's striking is as dangerous as Yuri's? I think it poses a different threat. I think that one punch knockout power is something that Yuri has as well, but in a different fashion. He's far more unorthodox, and it comes from some different strikes. I think the striking is more varied went from Yuri,
Mhm.
but Jamal Hill's just got that power that it's like a jab, and he's putting you out. So it's an interesting.
Exactly. Jamal Hill, I think, possesses the same sort of danger that Sean Strickland does with his 1-2, with his
Right.
boxing. He's not going to blow you away or show you anything that's like going to make like an insane highlight reel. Like, don't get me wrong, he's very proficient. Um, he can get knockouts, but he's not gonna like throw like a spinning elbow or
Right.
a wheelhouse kick to your face or a front kick. He's not gonna like Michael Chandler you with the front
Yeah.
kick to the face. That's not really what he's all about. Um, if I'm Glover, I love this fight. I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm absolutely taking this. No disrespect to Jamal Hill, but I do think that he is. I don't want to call him a one trick pony because that would be disrespectful.
Didn't you
But
just talk to him? You
uh,
can't say that.
to Jamal Hill, did I
Yeah.
talk to him? I did. I talked shit about him. Yeah, because
Oh,
I said that Jimmy Crute was gonna like fuck him up, and then I was wrong. And I wrote on my Instagram page. This is like a year or two ago. You're the only one that would
I
remember
thought I
that.
saw a picture of you two on the podcast or something like that.
Jamal Hill? No, he's never
Yeah.
been on my show.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was
No,
your
that was Terrence McKinney.
Terrence McKinney. That's who it was.
No,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
he's a freaking beast. That's my boy
yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it'll be really interesting to see how that works. And then lastly, before I let you go, I'd be remiss to not mention it. You know exactly what I'm going to talk about. Islam against Alex. Massive, massive fight. You got Alex coming into that one as a massive underdog. I think we all can understand why, but hey, he's the number one pound for pound guy in the UFC right now. Is it a mistake to underestimate that guy?
I think it's a mistake to underestimate him for sure. You can't underestimate someone who put it on Max Holloway in such a way. I think that if the tables were turned and Max Holloway was about to fight Islam, the consensus would not be that he's going to get smushed and he's going to get just absolutely derailed. I mean, look, when Holloway was supposed to fight Habib on short notice, no one had those feelings, right? And Habib is supposed to be the next, Islam is probably a little bit of a step down in talent so far that we know or we've seen from Habib, with the loss on his record and all that stuff. Um, so I think when we think about it in that way, and MMA math never pans out, but we're talking about a guy who, two close fights with Max, but the last one was a blowout, and that should stand for something, I think. And listen, Alex Volkanovski's stand up is very hard to deal with. He's going to be very fast, and he's going to be big. We're talking about a guy who played rugby and weighed over 230 plus pounds at one point in his life. So he's not going to be a stranger to the weight. He is going to be very short at the weight class. But if anything, that would entice Islam to stand with him, and I think Volk would want that to happen. The other things I see trending in Volkanovski's direction, he's brought in the right people for his camp. He brought in Craig Jones and some other guys from the B team jiu-jitsu squad, and I think that that's really going to prepare him to try and stand up when Islam's going to take him down. But Volkanovski's going to stand up with the confidence that he could defend any submission that comes to him because he's been training with guys who are the best in the world at getting chokes, the best in the world at getting submissions. And Islam is a once in a generation talent, but I very much doubt that he's going to catch a submission better than Craig Jones would catch a submission. So I think having that camp, having that crazy Australian man on your back for a whole 3 months working towards Islam is going to pay dividends. I think that's why he's doing it, so he can give up his back, stand up, and run away and get back to the feet without really have to worrying about the submission threat. On the flip side of it, though, if Islam can go out there and get on top of him and sit in half guard, it's going to be a long night for Volk.
It absolutely will. If you had to stake a wager on that one today, I was going to ask, where would you be leaning?
Listen, what is Volk is at what, like plus 600? I'm guessing something like
That
that.
is a great. Let's take a.
Honestly, if I'm an MMA fan and I have some disposable income to throw at a favorite that is probably going to be a pretty, heavily a heavy dog, I'm going to throw it at Volk, right? Like the guy's got the skill set. It's not often that
So it's actually not that bad. He
really
is plus 275 as of right now.
okay. I would still throw. I mean, what? There's no harm in throwing $50 at Volkanovski. It's a very unique situation that we're in, where we're talking about a guy who's some touted to be the best pound for pound fighter on the UFC roster coming into a fight as an underdog. We don't see that ever. We probably won't ever see that again. So why not? Like if Volkanovski beats him, or I'm sorry, if Makhachev beats him, he will be the best pound for pound fighter in the UFC. And any fight that he takes inside or outside of his weight class, I can almost guarantee he will not be an underdog.
This is
So it's interesting.
it's one of those things for me. I look at it, and yeah, they're both great fighters. But there's also something to be said about fighting in front of your hometown crowd.
It's true.
And if I can get a guy like that, the number one pound for pound guy in the UFC, he's probably heard a bunch of shit, a bunch of people saying that he doesn't have a chance to win. That's going to fuel his fire, despite being a champion, and nobody thinks you're going to win. That's kind of odd.
Yeah.
I think the only person who no one took seriously as a champion last go around was Carla, but maybe rightfully so there. But I think there's a lot of cosmic forces trending for Volk, and for me, I think you're spot on. And at plus 275, I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna watch those odds grow a little bit more to Islam,
Yeah.
and then I'll stake my wager here in another month or so. But
Yeah.
Tyler, always a great guy for me to talk to. I've really loved watching your career, and I'm happy because the next time we do one of these, we're going to be doing it for your professional career. So it's like we're
Yeah.
all leveling up, and it's just been quite a ride. Um, I wish you the best of luck in your upcoming bout. I know what that would mean to you going out with the win, but just what this has done for like you as a person, I think that's just as, if not more so important. And keep doing you and keep living the good fight. And I'll see you in the win column, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thanks again for having me. Thanks for everyone who listens, everyone who follows, family and friends who deal with me while I'm cutting weight or going long term, not responding to text messages or any of that stuff. So I care about you all, and thanks for sticking along for the ride.
If you want to watch Tyler fight, it is going to be on LFA's YouTube channel. So that's very, very important for people to know. If you're tuning in and think you're going to watch an amateur fight on Fight Pass, it's not going to happen. LFA, they do a really shitty job. Sorry, this is me talking, not Tyler. They do a shitty job of letting people know that the undercard is going to be streamed on their YouTube channel. So make sure if you're watching this right now, you go over to the LFA channel and subscribe to their channel. As soon as they go live, you'll get that notification. Go ahead, get that taken care of so you're not scrambling at the last minute trying to figure out what the hell's going on, because you're not going to get any traffic on it on social media. You got to be locked in and ready to go. Don't wait for that announcement on Instagram. Did I forget anything? I think I nailed that.
You nailed everything. You got it.
I should have an MMA podcast. But
Yeah.
Tyler, you're the absolute man. I will be watching your fight next Friday from Minnesota, and have what, Chicago pizza, or get one of those hot dogs that you talked about as soon as you
Sure.
get home, my friend.
Jimmy's Red Hots.
There you go, Jimmy's Red Hots. We'll make that happen. I'm sure Jimmy will take care of you.
Yes.
All right, buddy. Talk soon.
Thanks, man.